Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Andrew Cabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuity Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, Scott, and welcome back to the podcast. How's it going now?
It's going well. Thanks for having me back again.
I know. You did such a good job last time. I figured I'd let you back on again.
As a special guest? Is that it?
As a special guest. Yes. Yes. The title is there. It's yours.
I'll take it.
Yeah, definitely. So for our subscribership today, we're going to do something a little bit different. And we're going to keep it in the realm of Intuity Performance and identify a little bit what's going on with the partners. So Scott, myself, how Intuity Performance has been doing and performing itself over the past quarter, I would say, or so, as well as talking about some new developments. And when we're thinking about it from a leadership perspective, we thought it would be interesting for you to hear about some of the top trends in leadership and coaching in itself. What do you think about that, Scott? Was there anything that I missed?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Intuity. Let's look at some leadership impact and trends and go on from there.
All right, we're jamming. And everyone, I want to give kudos out of the gate to Scott because he literally prepared this in under 5 minutes. So Scott is like shooting from his hip, and I did it on purpose, just so you know, to help Scott grow a little bit in his uncomfortable zone of sans agenda.
So at least giving a little bit of context here. So I would enjoy taking a step back. All right, let me think about the podcast a little bit. Let's think about what do I want to say? What are some of the topics I want to bring up? And not actually writing things out or anything, but just having a bit of a clear picture as to where we're going. Where Ange is more oh, we have a topic. Okay, let's just go. Let's jump in and let's go for it. So I think that, yeah, to your point, kind of putting me back in the hot seat here and just diving into things. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, let's do this. So, Ange, I think the first thing we had talked about was what's going on with Intuity Performance in 2023. I think we're having a phenomenal year. Sorry, go ahead. I feel like you're going to jump in.
No, you're right. No, it has been. It's been a really great kickoff to the year. What are we? I don't know when the podcast will actually come out, but I know we're chatting here around the middle of June. So kind of going and closing out the second quarter. We've worked with some amazing kind of new clients that we brought on. We've even had some past clients reach back out to us for coaching or for leadership training. Yeah. And I mean, what about from an Intuity updating perspective? I know personally, I went through a program with Invest Nova Scotia that was really focused around looking at export development. So looking at not just supporting our other fellow Canadians here as well, but looking at exporting towards the US. And so that's one of the areas of growth for us this year. One of our OKRs is looking at, really helping increase our presence in the US market. And again, continue to support the impact that, leadership and people development can have in the workplace.
Exactly. I'm wanting to give a huge shout out to the collaborators with Invest Nova Scotia in assisting us to our first trade mission in Atlanta. So we're going there actually this Sunday. I'm set to go. So the purpose of that is more of educational and informational from a connecting perspective. And so I'm really excited to dive into the Atlanta market, understand more about how to not cater to the market, but how to work with businesses in Atlanta and understanding the demographics a little bit further, because even the way that we talk about business in Canada, there's different slang and there's different terms, there's different references that each state actually use. And I didn't even think about that in the first instance, let alone the demographic research that's required to really understand the business landscape in such a large state of Georgia.
So if you are calling in or tuning in from Atlanta, I'd say hit Ange up, but she'd probably be back home by this point. But
Yeah.
otherwise, hit her up either way. Now that she knows or has, what are some of the slang that's come up for you in some of your research, Ange? Anything
Um,
that's kind of top of mind,
oh,
or
you're putting me on the spot
I
now.
am now, aren't I?
I'm trying to think. There were just some interesting terms with regards to it. It wasn't even business related. It was like reference to like um different types of foods, I think it was, or
Yeah,
different directions and usage and such from that capacity.
yeah,
Not so much the business terms itself, if I remember.
okay,
But yeah,
yeah,
obviously I
that's
have to
fair.
refresh before I go.
And you'll have to give us an update when you get back.
Yeah, I would love to, definitely. And I'm really
Awesome.
excited too, because the cohort that we're going in from, there's other entrepreneurs from all across Atlantic Canada
Mhm.
that it has the opportunity to go on this trade mission. And so I'm super excited even to have some inter-networking opportunities with the great companies that we're going on the trade mission with.
All right, fantastic.
Yeah.
So what else is going on in 2D performance?
Oh, yeah. Intuity Performance in short. So, I mean, it's definitely been a really amazing ride so far this year for us. What comes top of mind for me in the sense of milestones is, we've really grown in the sense of month over month revenue, which is amazing, in the sense of our scaling programs. And that's a testament to also another program that we were involved with, the Greater Heights program. That's put on by the Center of Women in Business of Nova Scotia. However, they accept applicants from all over Canada. So if you're
Mm,
a small female entrepreneur, or excuse me, female-led business, Greater Heights program, definitely I would recommend. Lori Sinclair is amazing. She has experiences in startups and the tech side of things, as well as, professional leadership background. Going into the program, I really was just simply expecting to be able to understand how to financially tell the story about our business and really step into that kind of co-pilot situation, as you know, Scott, with all the business decisions that are in front of us on a weekly
mhm.
basis. And what I walked away with, I think, was twofold, if not more, because you're in the cohort and you're living and breathing not just your own business, but other individuals' businesses as well. So you see different applicabilities and different beliefs and different vantage points. My top three biggest takeaways, I would say, from that cohort is, the financial numbers really do tell the story and the health of your business. So it's very important to have financial literacy behind you. But from my seat as a CEO and co-founder, it's more so from a strategic perspective, right? So we know, love, and trust our third-party professionals, and of course, Scott, you have a diligent eye with regards to our day-to-day finances and invoices, receivables, etc. However, knowing when to do things like, okay, when do we hire someone else, and when do we reinvest in our business, and how do we make really succinct financial decisions so that we're not too far ahead of ourselves, but we're actually moving to a place where we're a little bit discomfort to ensure that we're hitting our strategic growth targets. So that was a really big proponent or aha moment for me in that
Mhm.
group, as well as regard to, just little things like, how often should we do a SWOT analysis? And by the way, there's not just a SWOT analysis, but looking at more so the opportunity side of things than threats, right? Listening, landscape, that type of thing. I know that there's many more in the sense of takeaways, but I'll leave it with the third one, around the fact of really understanding where your market is going. And I mean, Scott, you and I have conversations about competitiveness and
Mhm.
speaking to our marketing brand often, weekly even. But being able to take that larger landscape or larger look as to what are other competitors doing and kind of poking your head up outside of your business is also really important too. And being able to wrap kind of models around the same so that you're strategic.
Yeah, those sound
Yeah.
like some amazing takeaways, Ange. I know you've helped implement a lot of them within the organization for us, which has been, I think, quite helpful again as first time entrepreneurs, so to speak, in terms of having our business and growing it and everything else.
Yeah, definitely.
There's always a learning curve from there as well.
And I think like being vulnerable, Scott, you have to attest to this. And this is coming from a place of fact, I would say, in that oftentimes when we're sitting in rooms, because of the assistance and mentorship that we receive from these programs, like it's almost like we're more mature than we are in some aspects of our business than others, right? So sitting in different rooms, I feel like we have a lot of advantages in the sense of our strategies and the pieces that we have in play for our business, which I think speaks attributes in the sense of the work that we do on our, not just a business, but our partnership as well, to ensure that we're staying in step with each other.
Yeah. What is it? Now you sparked the question here. You said partnership. And
Yeah.
so what is it that you feel as a partnership that we've been able to grow over the past year? Putting you on the spot now.
Ooh, I got goosebumps with that question. I won't lie. I don't think there's a short answer to that question, to be honest with you, Scott.
I'm just trying to gain time for myself here.
I'm on to you now. I'm on to you. You see how he works? He really does need his time. That's okay, though. We're like yin and yang, right? Because I can talk for days and Scott can just sit back and he just waits and then put something or articulate something quite intelligent based on the time that he has to think about things. So it's all good. With regards to, but in all seriousness, with regards to our partnership, Scott, I think that we've really put a lot of time and effort in ensuring that we're connecting with each other as people, not just as business partners. Because I think if you remember in the first year, oftentimes we talk about what's good for the business. And that's really has done, like, I don't want to say 360 because that's not it. But it's flipped. It's almost like we flipped this switch of what's good for the partnership is good for the business. And I really appreciate that because it speaks more to Intuity's values around being human-centric. Like you can't separate business from personal. You can't separate business from, our behaviors or beliefs or how we're showing up, but you can grow in an intentional way how you interact with yourself and business or business professionals. And so I feel like we're really walking our walk and talking our talk in the sense, like, to be very specific, we have our own kind of acronyms with each other, right? So, again, with my personality type being a dominant influencer and Scott's personality type being a conscientious influencer and steady, again, talking about blends for those who haven't watched previous episodes with us, it stands for dominance, influence, steady, and conscientiousness. With these blends, there's different characteristics that come up. So different needs, different fears, different wants. And Scott and I have gone to the nth degree to understand each other by taking these kind of quote unquote observational self-assessments. And we have conversations about them. So now we have things like what we call the KJ. So that's our knee-jerk reaction. And that means that the conversation is not necessarily over, but this is my opinion in the first instance. And by the way, I reserve the right to come back and talk about this if I need to, or if something else comes up. And it just provides, I think, a little bit of grace in the sense of being able to slow down some of the conversations that we have and really ensure that we're both comfortable in how we're moving forward. Other things that we have is like, we talked about this before in past episodes as well. Are you ready to rumble? Right. So we've created our kind of like terms with levity so that we can interact with each other. And I think individually, we both have grown, Scott. I mean, I'll give you some space here to speak to this as well. But I think once we've gotten to the place of understanding our lanes as a partnership and then understanding what we need from each other, we've really been able to catapult the success of the business because we've got our quote unquote shit together, I feel. And also too, I think it's building trust because we're both remote. To our audience that is just kind of catching up with us now, we've only seen each other twice in the past 3.5 years, I think. Part of it due to COVID, the other part, Scott being in Ottawa and I'm here in Nova Scotia. Hemmons Plains, Nova Scotia. So I feel like we do a lot of trust building as well, organically, in the sense of asking questions or checking in, like, how's my performance doing? And what can I do better to show up? And what do you need for support? Are you good? Do you want me to take anything else on? Like, we're both very, I guess, very much, not so much coaching each other, but taking the coach approach so that we ensure that each of us are doing well and that we're both still excited about things. And then also balancing it with operational stuff. The other thing that I really enjoy is that even though we spend a lot of time together, it's a lot of intentional time. So we have our consultants meetings, we have our sales meetings, we have our financial forecasting planning. We talk about our OKRs each month. So again, that just is a testament to the type of work that we're very much intentionally putting into our business and for each other.
Yeah.
How's that for time, Scott? You ready?
That was a good summary, Ange. But I'm disappointed because you took away my point that I was going to bring up around trust, and then everything went sideways because now you took that away from me. But that was what I was going to speak to. Actually, funny enough, working in a remote environment. I mean, we have a remote team. That's based on what you just said. That's no surprise. But I think having the trust in each other to know that, sometimes when maybe we don't hear from each other as often because life is happening for one reason or another, whether it be things going on at home, whether it be things going on in the business or our personal lives, and we're maybe not connecting as much as we usually do. What I can really appreciate is during those times, it's not like, oh my gosh, what's Scott doing or what's Ange doing or what's going on, but it's rather, oh, okay. You just trust the process. You just know what's going on, and you know that you trust the other person that they're doing what's best for the partnership, for the business, and for themselves. And so I think that's something that that kind of stuck out to me this year in terms of how we've grown, in terms of having more of that trust and everything else, and being able to come out and be like, oh, Ange, I'm coming up for air here. I've just been doing all these other things. I know we haven't connected as much over the past week or two. What's going on? How are things going? And then kind of checking back in from that perspective. And so I think having some of that grace and some of that foundation built from a partnership perspective only continues to amplify the way we're able to work together.
I think too, leveraging off of what you're saying, Scott, what was coming up for me as you were talking about trust was equally the level of vulnerability that we've kind of tapped into both professionally and personally. Like, I don't know if there's anybody else that knows me that knows as much about me as you do. Like, you know my social insurance number and you know who I'm dating. Like, I don't know what else there is. We share a lot. And again, I think it's coming from an intentional connection perspective, which coming full cycle back to the business side of things, I think it allows us to know and believe and trust that there's a safe space for us if we do drop a ball, or if something isn't going as planned, or when we get to our OKRs that month and we both look at each other and we're like, do you want to have a working meeting? And we're like, okay, good. We both didn't work on this. Awesome. Not that it happens all the time, but all this to say is that I really appreciate the fact that we've been able to come to a place where we're mindful of each other and the business, and understanding that we're human first and that shit happens essentially at the end of the day. Obviously, having said that, we have 46% growth in comparison from last year or to the year prior. So we're A players. We expect a lot from each other and the business. But at the same time, we're humbled by things like trust and vulnerability.
If I can add to what you're saying, Ange, you touched on a piece around accountability.
Fair.
And I think what's been nice about that is that there hasn't been a fear about either holding each other accountable or taking accountability. And so, recognizing growing a business, everything else, there's always going to be pains. There's always going to be things that go on that might not go the way that you would like them to, and everything else. But being able to come in and say, hey, you know what, Ange, this is what happened. You know what, I probably could have done this better, or you know what, maybe we should have looked at it this way instead, and being able to kind of be accountable for those things without the fear of these huge repercussions, but rather having a place that is like, all right, that's fine. This is where we're at today. How can we do better next time? And taking that kind of problem-solving mindset, I think has had huge gains in terms of how, creating that safe space to be able to grow from, rather than being like, oh man, I fudged up here. Now, how can I not hide it, but like, how can I spin it properly? Or how can we, do it differently? Or how can I, it's like, no, no, hey, this is what messed up. This is what's going on. And
Mhm.
this is what I'd like to do moving forward to do better. I
And
think it's been great.
and I think it's because we're both about transparency.
Hmm.
And what I was hearing there was basically because we expect transparency from each other. And when it comes to accountability, it's not reverse engineering or reverse thinking in the sense that Ange needs to hold Scott accountable and Scott needs to hold Ange accountable. Rather, we're solely accountable for our own performance
Hmm.
and to be transparent with each other. And that's what I really appreciate. The other thing that came out of it for me was how I can't speak for you, Scott, but it's actually been a confidence building exercise for me because knowing that I don't, there's no repercussions. Not that there's no repercussions, because there is,
Hmm.
but the repercussions are coming from the perspective of we allow each other to look at the impact, and we're not focusing on the impact, but we're rather focusing on the skills that we need to grow for the betterment of ourselves, the partnership, and the business. And I think
Mm.
that's so important in the sense of confidence building, because what that has done for me personally is, I can be more, I can inject more levity. I can be more jovial. I can have more confidence in going outwards to the public and talking, which I didn't have in the past. Like,
Hmm.
past lives in HR, I'd literally almost puke before I'd have to get up and speak in front of 100 plus organization. It was challenging for me. And now, because of not just our partnership, but how we confide in each other and build each other's confidence up, it's really helped me in the sense of being able to speak openly and speak my voice.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Ange. That's great.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm proud of both of us.
Yeah. I'm curious. I know this wasn't something that had kind of come up in our 10-second pre-convo before the podcast.
Oh.
Taking a little pivot here. I'm wondering, would it be valuable at all, kind of touching on some of the things we just discussed as a partnership and
Mm,
the applicability, maybe even in the workplace? Like
absolutely.
how others like, hey, this sounds great.
Yeah.
Not to say, our partnership, our business is perfect by any means. It's always
No.
a work in progress. There's always things going on that we're looking to improve on.
As well as hard
Um,
conversations sometimes. Definitely.
100%, 100%.
Before we pivot there, Scott, I have one
Yeah.
question for you. What has been the hardest conversation that we've had to have?
Oh man, what has been the hardest conversation we had to have? I feel like our marketing person Jessica have to edit this section just so I can think here. I'm gonna go way back to, I think, either it was our first, yeah, it wasn't the first few months, it was the first year and a bit. It's like we were maybe a
Mm,
year and 2 months in.
mm,
It was coming back from the holidays and everything else. And I think there had been, there was some miscommunication. We didn't have the same levels of trust and understanding and everything else that was kind of built up at that point in time.
mhm,
And I think we had to we really had to take some hard conversations around how we're expecting each other to kind of show up for each other, and like what does the
mm.
partnership look like. And I think that was a really kind of challenging time and conversation. However, at the end of the day, if anything, it helped build the foundation for where we're at today. And by
Absolutely.
having those tough conversations and saying, "Hey, like this is what I need from you as a business partner, and this is what I'm expecting," and just as much as like in the business itself, but also like as a human and as a other person in my life, so to speak.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think that if you're gonna put me on the spot, I think that's what kind of.
You did amazing. You did amazing because I was absolutely curious because I was trying to reflect. And the reason why there's a method to my madness is
Yeah.
because we've been talking about all of the fundamental skill sets that have been really successful for us. And I
Mhm.
think that it's not just looking about or at what success is, but also looking about or at it from the perspective of how have we built that success? And
Mm.
it's really important to think about things like what lane should we be in, and having expectations, both from a business perspective and a personal perspective, and how we interact with each other. And that builds into some of our kind of silliness around the KJs or the different acronyms that Scott brings in for the month, right? So I appreciate your vulnerability around that piece, Scott, because it's really important for, I think, not just entrepreneurs, but anybody who's sitting in a leadership perspective, to take the lens around, who am I as a leader? Like, what are my expectations? What are my principles and my values? And then how do I display those? How do I express those in the workplace? And then how can I in turn make sure that my team members feel comfortable that they can speak to me in the same way?
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, right?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so, like, I've been writing down a list of things when it comes to thinking about this from the perspective of best practices for leadership. And so the things that really kind of popped out based on our conversation are things like ensuring that there's an alignment with regards to your team and your leadership team. So peers, downwards, upwards, sidewards, etc. And that means different things in different positions. And then also having consistency. So that could be consistency of sustainable or meaningful meetings. So for us, again, we have our forecasting meetings, our OKR meetings, our consultancy meetings, and then we have different channels, and we understand what those channels mean and how to communicate with each other and when. Openness, vulnerability, trust. We kind of talked about those three things in depth. Our expectations and lanes, which has been the most recent part of our conversation, as well as resiliency. It takes resiliency, and I would add grit to that list, to be able to kind of take a step back in any relationship and bounce back without judgment.
Now, you're talking my language here, Ange. Okay, we got a list going. I like this. This is start for me here.
I did it for you.
Thank you. I know, I was impressed. I'm like, Ange is taking a list. Are you serious? Since when does this happen? So you talked a little bit about alignment. So I think, when you're speaking to that, alignment in values and expectations, and also just an understanding. And I think this feeds into the expectations piece, but understanding of what your expectations are and what the alignment looks like from there. Because oftentimes, you don't, I hate to use the phrase or the idea of, like, you don't have to always like the people that you're working with, right? But it doesn't
kind
mean
of true, though. It is.
So how do I want to put it? So somebody can work much different than you can, and that's okay. So understanding that, your way isn't always necessarily the best way. And if anything, having different working styles can actually be quite beneficial.
That's true.
However,
too.
also recognizing that, well, even we use us as an example, if Ange is always firing at the hip, it becomes very difficult for Scott because it's not his natural style. And then vice versa. If Scott always wants to take a step back and say, hey, let's think about things, let's slow down and let's analyze how we can move forward, very challenging for Ange. And so I think an alignment for that is better understanding as to, well, how can we ebb and flow between these two working styles and find alignment in how we work together. And maybe that's a better way of putting it than, like, you don't have to like people that you're working with.
but it's true on its face. I feel like when I'm reflecting back in my career, as I would say, I can speak for both of us, there has been people in the workplace that you don't jive with. And how you further have described it is kind of like, more than likely they had an opposite behavior than I did. And more than likely, I wasn't in an open mindset, or maybe my confidence could have been grown at that perspective, right? So I think what I'm taking away from what you're saying is absolutely understanding yourself and then being able to adapt for others, and taking it from a natural lens of, if I'm getting a visceral reaction from someone at work, what does that mean for me internally first? And that's a really hard question to respond to when you're in the mix of things. But I think it's really important because it gives you many puzzle pieces to look at. So is it a different working style? Is it a power kind of shift? Is it, something internally that you need to work on? Is it the way that you're interpreting the data that's coming from someone else, whether it be verbal or nonverbal?
If I can unpack that further or maybe even clarify here, and so I think what we're talking about is like if you're having that visceral reaction, it's like, well, what's the root cause? Where is this coming from? Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Definitely. And I can think
Mm.
of a really specific example if you're okay with me sharing. It's a
Sure, I don't
work
know what it is, but
it's a no, I was gonna continue to say it's a work example around just simple miscommunication, but it also backs into my needs versus your needs, task
Mhm,
orientated versus person orientated.
mhm,
So there was a time where, and I mean, this was a year ago, so I can't even remember what it was about. It wasn't anything substantial, but I think it added to understanding each other's lanes and also building trust. And
mhm,
so there was a piece of information that was missing for me, or you didn't come to me first. And I could see that you were operating behind the background with our consultants at the time. And so I brought it to our meeting and I was like, Scott, like, I don't understand what's going on. Or no, I think you brought it up because you're like, Aunt, I just want to check in. You seem a little bit off. And I was like, well, to be honest, I'm just trying to digest this situation and be able to articulate my feelings without coming across in the wrong manner. And you were just like, well, let's just unpack it, Ange. Like I'm here, I'm listening, because the last thing that you wanted to do was to quote unquote step on my toes or make me feel anything other than a valuable partner in this business.
mm,
And at the time I was kind of frustrated because there was a few layers that we still needed to digest and unpack at that point in building our trust together as a team. And so I just kind of unraveled it for you. And you kind of stepped back, I remember, and you were just like, oh shit, Ange, like I was trying to take this off your plate. Like I wasn't trying to exclude you. I really was just thinking about the task and how busy you are with XYZ. There was a couple client engagements going on at that point. So you were really
mm,
just trying to take it in your lane and then let me know the outcome. And at that point in time, what I needed from you was the heads up to say, I'm taking this in my lane and I'll let you know the outcome. And I was fine with
mm,
you doing it and I appreciated it. And I think I was in tears because I was like, oh my God, like he's that considerate. This is what he's doing. But I think it's just a necessity to understand differences in expectations in those conversations. And that to me kind of paints the picture of what we were just talking
mm.
about.
Yeah, no, that's a really good example. And I believe I know exactly what you're referring to. And again, coming back to that initial thought process for me is, well, hey, I'm taking the task over. I'm working on this. I'm taking it away from Anne. Just one thing she doesn't have to worry about. I'll let her know without necessarily thinking about like, well, if she knows about this stuff going on, but doesn't really know what's happening with it, well, how's this impacting her? What's the story she might be telling herself about what's going
Right.
on? And so having
Definitely.
more of that transparent communication was a bit of a growth edge for myself in that situation.
Of course. Of course. And my concern came from two places. Like one was, you know, is at that point in time, I felt like I needed decision making power, being totally honest and open
Mm,
here. And I really didn't, because in the grand scheme of things, it's fine. I think it was just a confidence edge for me, as well as feeling like if I didn't have all the information, how could I respond to clients? Or how could I be able to digest that information in a timely manner based on your timeline? So I felt like it was just miscommunication in the sense of a few things around my own kind of confidence as well as the need to know, because it would impact how I'm doing business too. And I
mm,
think that speaks to a really big piece of the puzzle, especially in remote work, is that when you're having that kind of alignment or expectations conversation or even lanes conversation with your team members, identifying what information is valuable to you, I think is super important because,
mhm,
you know, to me, I wouldn't think about the minutia in each and every step of how I'm doing it. But every single time I talk to you, Scott, not every single time, but often I'll talk to you and you'll be like, okay, so how are we doing this? How, like, help me understand the steps. And like, so now I just know organically how you need me to deliver that
mm,
information versus in past, I'd be like, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. That the other thing, cost, return on investment, et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, whoa, okay, so what's the cycle here? So I don't think, when I think back to like being employed, I don't think I was ever afforded the opportunity to be like, hey, what resources do you need from me? Or what information in this meeting is valuable to you, or what do you need from me in the sense of information to really set you up for success? And that's kind of what I'm pulling out of those pieces.
What would be the impact looking back at that time in your employment if you had a manager that actually was asking you those questions?
I would feel valued, understood. I think I could say with transparency that my confidence would have been built a lot faster in that role. I'd feel empowered, as well as wanting to be more engaged with my leadership. You
Pretty
would think
stuff,
right?
I'll just by asking a couple of questions. That's all the manager has to do. Just ask you a few questions, and you get all that return on investment.
I really think it is. Like it's so undervalued in the sense of how we spend our time with our team members. And it could be such small tweaks, maybe just an extra 5 minutes. And then you don't have to worry about replacement costs. And then you can be more concerned about talking about their skill sets and where else do they want to grow, or how else do they want to grow with your company, versus the proverbial firefighting that we're mostly used to.
Yeah. Not to have you try and say those questions exactly in the same way again. For those that maybe didn't have a pen and paper out and maybe passed them by, what were some of those questions that kind of came up that you felt would have an impact, just so we can kind of say them again?
For sure. What type of resources do you need from me to be set up for success? What type of information is valuable from my desk to you? Again, with the thought process of making your work easier, more accessibility, et cetera, less confusion. The other question I think that I asked was something around the realm of, how do you need me to speak to you? I think I said it better the first time though. How can I deliver information the best way for you? Basically would be another way to ask that question.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was anything else, but yeah, just at the end of the day, it's being curious about what the other people need from you as a leader. And I think the biggest lesson that I've learned from our partnership, honestly, as well as, being thrusted in front of, facilitations or speaking engagements or even that coach approach, is what can I give to the other person at the other end versus what are they thinking about me? How am I showing up? How do I look? How do I sound? Am I intelligent? Do I have this all right? Being able to flip that switch of what can I give versus how am I seen, or what can I get, really affords to what's needed to serve your team members. And I strongly believe that's curiosity without judgment.
No, I love that.
On a lighter note, I want to switch gears as well, because, the theme has been talking about a lot of Intuity updates. And so Scott's hitting a milestone here. I'm not going to take your thunder. I want you to talk about it though.
Oh, that's okay. Why? What's going on? What's going on in my life?
Oh, I don't know. Just a move to a different province, renovation.
Oh yeah, there's that.
Life changes.
Yeah, selling the condo. Oh, my wife's 39 weeks pregnant. Oh yeah, that too. Yeah. That one. Oh, is that one we want to talk about?
Maybe Jess should edit that out. If Ali listens to that, I don't know.
Oh, she's fine. She's fine. She probably hears me. The door is a little bit open. Yeah, so we're bringing a little baby girl into the world. So we're very excited for that. So in the next week or two, we'll be lucky to have her here.
That's amazing, and I'm absolutely ecstatic for both you and Ali and the family. Because I think it's one of the first grandbabies potentially.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah. So
we get to break the ice with that one.
We'll get ready to take a back seat for Christmas presents, for birthday presents.
Ah, yes.
Any sort of celebration. Wellness, health.
That's okay. I'm fine with that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. What have you noticed going into the realm or turning that page to a new chapter of fatherhood? What have you noticed in the sense of your mind shift or your mindset shifting around balancing, or I should say integrating work with life?
I think there's a couple things that come up. One is, and like we're not even there yet, but like I'm already feeling it. It's like you can prepare as much as you want, but at the end of the day, it's just gonna hit the fan. Like it's just going down. Like it doesn't matter what you do, it's going down. It's happening.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think, from a business perspective, one, it's very comforting having the type of partnership we have where I feel that trust and everything else to be able to step away for a little bit, to be able to help
Yeah.
support at home and not feel like I need to be jumping right back into work the day after kind of thing. And so I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of weight off my shoulders from that perspective.
Hmm.
On the other hand, I still tend to take it on. And so I still have
You
that in the
do.
back of my mind as to like, okay, how am I preparing? How am I ensuring everyone's set up for success? How do I ensure that everything that I have going on doesn't kind of like fall to the wayside, and things along those lines.
Hmm.
And then, no, to be honest, I'm kind of looking forward to seeing kind of the change in day to day
Hmm.
and change in diapers. I guess maybe not looking forward to that as much, but it felt in line with what I was saying. And yeah, so I think it'll be a really interesting curve, and I think I'll come back just that much more motivated to keep building, keep pushing things forward.
Definitely, for sure. Well, huge
Yeah.
congrats in that area, and I can't wait to hear more. They've been holding back the baby's name too. Like, I think that's been the hardest part of my journey through this. Just so you know, Ali, if you're listening to this, no, I'm just joking.
You and
I'm
everyone
super
else,
excited
and
for you
it's
both.
okay. You're not alone in not knowing your baby's name.
I could imagine the grandparents, like if I were to think back and tell my mom, no, I'm not telling you the baby's name, she would just be beside herself.
I think yeah, I'm hearing more and more people are doing that. Not
Really? It's like a
sharing.
new
Yeah,
trend, is it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
It's like I don't know. It's something about. I think like if we're looking at the root cause, I think it's something around like, well, I don't. How do I want to make it negative, but like I don't need your input kind of thing. It's like I want to take the choice on my own, and then once it's done, like it's done. Like what are you going to say? I've already named the baby. You're going to tell me like how much you hate the name now. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. It's done.
Right,
So I
right.
wonder, I wonder how much of it is kind of baked in that.
That's interesting. Interesting.
Um,
Yeah. I think it aligns with your demographic too, right?
hmm,
So when you think about this from a workplace perspective, because we're different generations, if I recall correctly, I was still in the realm of following instructions, but having some questions.
mhm,
Whereas with I'm trying to think of the right gens, the Gen Y or
yeah.
Z, it's more about advocating for personal preferences and rights
Mm,
and approaches and different values or visions, etc. Which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just
mm,
a different way, again, especially from a leadership perspective,
mhm,
that we need to look and be more curious with regards to how we can allow our team members to have a bit more freedom or empowerment
mhm.
or say in the matter, etc. Right?
Well, I can understand the frustration that can come up with something like that when there is that lack of understanding or that lack of
Mm,
curiosity, right? It's like,
mm,
well, why are they making these demands? Where is this coming from? And with that type of mindset, yeah, it becomes very difficult to just support somebody like that because you're coming from that place of judgment rather than from a place of curiosity as to, oh, I'm wondering why they're, and you don't necessarily agree with it, right? You
mm,
you have different experiences on your own and everything else. But yeah,
exactly.
I like what you're mentioning there.
Yeah, for sure. So, how would you leave us today in the sense of Intuity's updates?
Man, I don't know. We're kind of a little bit all over the place here today, but I enjoyed it, being able to share a little bit from Intuiti perspective, share a bit about our own partnership and growth and learnings, and then aligning those things with, how others can maybe implement them for themselves with their teams or
Hmm.
in their own workplaces.
Hmm.
Um, what would be your parting words, Ange? I know you're usually the podcast host, and you're always asking other people, "Well, tell me your top three things you got from this today." And I'm gonna grab the virtual mic from you. I'm gonna take it over. I'm gonna flip it over to you, Ange. What are you leaving today's podcast with?
I think it was an awesome opportunity for us to reflect on the growth of our partnership as well as
Mhm,
Intuity Performance and identifying, adapting, and creating a list of must have skill sets within organizations that are more of the human-centric approach, as well as kind of like what's talking about things with regards to our interpersonal growth, and things that are going on in the sense of changes. So I think it's been well-rounded in the sense of an update from Scott and Ange's desk for sure.
I like that. An update from Scott and Ange's desk.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll make this a monthly or quarterly event.
Can we change our background so it's like almost like a news teleprompter
We'll have to ask Jess for that. Okay.
In our news station, maybe?
There we go.
I don't know. One last thing I do want to drop though. So we've identified that our next cohort for whole person leadership is coming up September 20th. So if there's been anything that has really sparked your interest from a leadership perspective and you want to unpack it further, make sure you apply today. We only have a limited amount of seats with regards to our open cohorts. So check out our website at intuityperformance.com, and you can look under, if I remember correctly, services, whole person leadership, and that will take you to our landing page for your application.
Yeah, and let's drop the link in the page notes as well. That would give easy access.
Definitely. Fantastic.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks for having me on again, Ange, and looking forward to the next time.
Thank you very much, special guest. We're looking forward to having you back on again soon.
All right, until then.
Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuity Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.